You are sitting on one of the most powerful income machines ever built, and most people using it have no idea how much money they're leaving on the table. This video is about the best dividend ETFs to actually live off of in America right now. Not just collect a little side income, actually live off. Cover your rent, your groceries, your life, without ever selling a single share. Here's the thing, most videos on this topic get completely wrong. They show you a yield number, tell you it's big, and call it a day. But yield alone will bankrupt you in retirement if you don't understand what's hiding underneath it. I've gone through the actual 2026 data, tax treatment, fee drag, total return, dividend growth. And what I found completely flipped my thinking on which ETFs actually belong in your portfolio. Here's what we're covering. First, why the most popular high-yield ETF on YouTube might be quietly costing you a fortune in taxes. Then, the three-tier portfolio structure almost nobody builds, but everyone should. And finally, the exact dollar amounts you need at 5 different income levels to walk away from work forever. Let's go. Let's start with the one that surprises people the most, and it involves the most talked about dividend ETF on the internet right now, JEPI. JEPI has an 8.15% yield. That number is everywhere, and on the surface, it looks incredible. If you need $60,000 a year to live, you only need about $736,000 invested. That feels achievable. That feels real. But here's what nobody is showing you. JEPI's distributions are taxed as ordinary income, not qualified dividends. Ordinary income, which means they get taxed at your marginal rate, the same rate as your paycheck. If you're in the 22% bracket, your real after-tax yield on JEPI drops to about 6.36%. If you're in the 32% bracket, it falls to 5.5%. That headline 8% just became 5.5% in your pocket. Now compare that to SCHD. SCHD only yields 3.27% right now. Sounds way worse, right? But SCHD pays qualified dividends. And here's where it gets wild. For a married couple with taxable income under $98,900 in 2026, the federal tax rate on qualified dividends is zero, literally 0%. So SCHD's 3.27% yield is 3.27% in your pocket. JEPI's 8.15% yield might be 5.5% in your pocket. The gap just went from 5 points down to 2. And we haven't even gotten to the other problems with JEPI yet. That's important on its own, but if you stop there, you're still missing the bigger picture. Here's the second thing, and this one genuinely blew my mind when I ran the numbers. SCHD has grown its dividend by roughly 11% every single year for 13 years. That's not a typo. 10.99% compounded annually over a decade. Most people look at SCHD's 3.27% yield and think it's boring. Low yield, move on. But that thinking ignores one of the most powerful forces in all of investing, compounding. Here's what 11% annual dividend growth actually does. If you buy $500,000 of SCHD today, you collect $16,350 in dividends this year. Fine. Not life-changing, but if SCHD keeps growing that dividend at its historical rate, that same $500,000, not a dollar added, not a single share bought, throws off $118,200 per year by 2045. The portfolio didn't change. The income machine underneath it did. Your yield on original cost hits 8.37% by 2035. It hits 23% by 2045. People who bought SCHD 10 years ago are now collecting yields on their original investment that make JEPI look slow. This is the concept called yield on cost, and it's the most undervisualized idea in all of income investing. SCHD isn't a low-yield ETF. It's a low starting yield ETF that turns into a monster if you give it time. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because yield and growth aren't the only things that matter. Fees are quietly eating your lunch too. VYM, the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, charges 0.04% per year. That is the cheapest major dividend ETF in America. SCHD charges 0.06%. Both of those are basically free. JEPI charges 0.35%. That sounds small. It's not. On a $500,000 portfolio, the fee difference between VYM and JEPI is $1,550 every single year. Over 10 years, simplified, VYM cost you about $20,000 in fees. JEPI cost you $175,000. That's a $155,000 difference. Money that stays invested in VYM and keeps compounding, or walks out the door every year in JEPI expenses. And those fees get charged in good years and bad years. Even in years when market volatility collapses and JEPI's options premiums shrink, you're still paying the 0.35%. VYM also holds over 400 stocks, which gives you enormous diversification. It's got $88.7 billion in assets, the largest dividend ETF by assets under management in America. But I need to warn you about something hiding inside VYM that almost nobody talks about. VYM's single largest holding right now is Broadcom, at 8.69% of the fund. Broadcom is a semiconductor company. Its dividend yield is about 1.1%, one of the lowest yielding names in the entire fund. It got in because of its massive market cap, not because it's a great dividend payer. And about 60% of Broadcom's revenue is now AI linked. So if you're buying VYM because you want stable, boring dividend income, you've quietly put nearly 9% of your money into a high-growth AI chip company. When Broadcom dropped 40% in early 2025, VYM investors absorbed about 3.5% of that loss directly from a stock they thought they owned for income. That's the yield trap hiding inside the fund. Know it's there. Now. If you've been watching this and thinking JEPI is just a bad product, it's not. It's a misunderstood one. JEPI returned 10.5% last year. The S&P 500 returned 20.1%. That 9.6% gap is the structural cost of JEPI's covered call strategy. When the market runs hard, JEPI surrenders all the upside above its call strike to the option buyer. That's where the premium income comes from. It's not free money, it's your upside, repackaged. In a sideways market or a downturn, JEPI is excellent. In 2022, when the market dropped 18%, JEPI only fell about 13.7%. It did exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is, most people are using JEPI as a permanent core holding in a taxable account. That's the wrong tool in the wrong account. But here's something almost no one is covering yet. There are newer covered call ETFs that solve JEPI's biggest problem. SPYI, the NEOS S&P 500 High Income ETF, uses call spreads instead of outright covered calls. That means it still collects premium income but doesn't completely surrender the upside. Last year, SPYI delivered 19.9% total return with a 7.6% yield. In the same period, JEPI returned 10.5%. That's nearly double the total return with a comparable yield. GPIQ from Goldman Sachs returned 36.36% over the past year with a 9.76% yield. QDVO delivered 32.68% annual returns with a 10% yield. Covered call ETFs are not all the same product. JEPI caps everything above the strike. SPYI and QDVO use smarter structures that let more appreciation through. The difference can be 9 to 20 percentage points in a single bull market year. Most people who found covered call ETFs found JEPI first and stopped there. Don't stop there. So how do you actually put this together into a portfolio that funds your life? This is the part I want you to really pay attention to, because almost every dividend ETF video gives you one ETF and calls it a solution. That's not how real income portfolios work. The structure I want to walk you through is what I call the Dividend Portfolio Pyramid. 3 tiers, each one doing a different job. Tier 1 is your growth engine. This is 30 to 40% of your portfolio. SCHD or DGRO. Current yield around 3%. Dividend growth around 11% per year. This is not the money paying your bills today. This is the machine that will pay your bills in 15 years. It compounds. It grows. It gets more powerful every year. Tax treatment is qualified dividends, so in the right setup, you pay 0 federal tax on it. Tier 2 is your current income layer, 40 to 50% of the portfolio, VYM or a blended dividend index, current yield around 2.2 to 3.1%, dividend growth around 6 to 7% per year. This is your steady, broad income engine, over 400 stocks, low fees. This is the foundation that pays your actual bills right now. Tier 3 is your income booster, 10 to 20% of the portfolio, JEPI or SPYI, yield of 7 to 8%. No dividend growth. This is options premium income, not business growth. Its job is to juice your current cash flow while Tier 1 compounds in the background. Here's the critical part that nobody explains. Tier 3, JEPI, SPYI, belongs in your Roth IRA or your 401k, not your taxable account. Put it in a tax-advantaged account and that ordinary income tax problem disappears entirely. SCHD belongs in your taxable account. Qualified dividends, potentially zero federal tax for a couple under $131,100 of gross income. Flip this around. Put JEPI in your taxable account and SCHD in your Roth, and you lose 10 to 15% of your annual dividend income to completely unnecessary taxes every single year. Now let's talk real numbers, because I know what you actually want to know is, how much do I need? Here is the 2026 matrix using current yields. If you need $40,000 a year to live, you need $1,223,000 in SCHD, $1,818,000 in VYM, $491,000 in JEPI, or $526,000 in SPYI. If you need $60,000 a year, you need $1,835,000 in SCHD, $2,727,000 in VYM, $736,000 in JEPI, or $789,000 in SPYI. If you need $80,000 a year, you need $2,447,000 in SCHD, $3,636,000 in VYM, $982,000 in JEPI, or $1,053,000 in SPYI. On raw numbers, JEPI and JEPQ look like they win by a mile. And for someone who needs income right now and has a large tax-advantaged account, they might be the right answer. But once you layer in the tax drag, the fee drag, and the missed appreciation in a bull market, and especially once you factor in SCHD's dividend growth compounding over 15 years, the math gets a lot closer. And for someone building over a decade or more, SCHD's compounding income often surpasses JEPI's current income by year 10 without ever adding another dollar. The right portfolio isn't one ETF, it's the pyramid. Growth engine, income foundation, income booster, each one in the right account, each one doing its specific job. If this breakdown was useful, I want to ask you something quick. Drop a comment below and tell me which tier of the pyramid you're currently building. Are you in the growth phase stacking SCHD, the income phase leaning on VYM, or are you already running a full 3-tier stack? I read every comment, and your answer actually helps me know what to cover next. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, the tax optimization side, the exact reconstitution strategy for SCHD in March, or how to build a pyramid from scratch with a smaller starting portfolio, I've got videos on all of it. Check the next one up on screen now. Let's bring this home. JEPI's 8% yield becomes 5.5% after taxes for many investors. SCHD's 3.27% yield can become zero tax income for a couple who engineers their income right, and it turns into a 23% yield on cost by 2045 if the dividend growth holds. VYM is the cheapest path to dividend income in America, but it's hiding a 9% bet on an AI semiconductor company inside a fund you bought for stability. The covered call world didn't stop at JEPI. SPYI and QDVO are doing things with option structures that JEPI simply cannot do. And the total return difference in a bull market is massive. And the 3-tier pyramid, growth engine, income foundation, income booster, each in the right account, is the architecture that actually lets you live off dividends without ever touching your principal. You came in thinking this was going to be a yield comparison. It turned into a full income engineering blueprint. That's exactly what it needed to be. Now go build the machine.